Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Jill Brand, members of the Aging Committee. My name is David Schaecter. I'm 95 years old and a proud American and a proud Jew and a survivor of 2 Nazi concentration camps. I'm a witness to the greatest act of anti-Semitism, where 6 million Jews were killed for no other reason other than being a Jew. I was born in a small town in Slovakia, Czechoslovakia, in 1929. In 1940, my father was taken away from our family by the government. That was the last time I saw him. A year later, I was 11 years old. The rest of my family were rounded up and placed into train cattle cars. The car fit more than 50 people, and they put in 80. There was nowhere to sit. We couldn't only stand or fall on top of each other. Sanitary facilities were limited to 1 bucket. Approximately 25% of the people were dead or dying when we arrived at Auschwitz. When we arrived at Auschwitz, the Nazis separated us. My mother was holding the hands of my 2 little sisters, Leah and Marianne, when they were taken away. This was the last time I saw them. Someone told my brother Jacobo to have me stand on his feet to appear taller, and I did at 11 years old. I was shaved bald and given a tattoo on my right arm. We were assigned to a work detail. We rose every day at 6 a.m. and walked 2 to 3 kilometers to our jobs, cleaning the rail cars that we arrived in. The floors were covered with human feces, urine, blood, and corpses. I still smell the taste of filth and the chemicals we had to use. The Nazis were not selective on how and who they beat or who they killed. Yaakov, my brother, would take beatings meant for me, and he shared his food with me. And he did small things to help me survive. For example, the grease canister for the axle of the trains were as big as me. Yaakov tried to get smaller canisters of grease for me to carry. Yaakov and I were in Auschwitz for more than 2 years before being transported to Buchenwald in Germany, Nazi Germany, in 1943. I was about 13 years. By this point, the war was not going well for the Nazis. I remember the air I was breathing was horrendous. It was the smell of burning flesh and smoke. We knew what the Nazis were doing. They also poisoned the water pipelines. We knew to boil the water pipelines to keep from getting sick. One day I saw Jacob, my brother, drinking the water without boiling it. I didn't want to live anymore, he said. The next day he was sick and dysentery, frail and weak. They marched us to work, but I could not pull him up, and I could not stop because the guards pushed his gun beside my head. I let go of Jacob, and he just laid there. And he continued, and we continued. About 10 seconds later, I heard the sound of a gunshot. I knew they had shot him, and I never saw Jacobo after that. After almost a year, around November of 1944, I was placed on another rail car along the route near Passau, Bavaria. The U.S. Air Force bombed the train. I was alone without my brother to protect me. But I jumped out of the train car and I ran like hell to the forest. After 8 days, I was found by the Czech partisans. I was almost 15 years old and weighed 83 pounds. After recovering at the hospital at the end of the war, I returned to my hometown. I had hoped to find comfort, but instead I found more anti-Semitism. I had to hide in a barn on a family farm before making my way back to the train station, back to go to Prague. Other Jews that returned had been killed. Many years before I learned my father had survived this Mauthausen concentration camp. It was actually a salt mine, but had died 3 days after the liberation of typhoid. Before the war, we lived on a farm that was in our family for 7 generations. I had lost 105 family members, siblings, aunts and uncles, and cousins, all murdered. Our land was taken, and I was an orphan. I came to America in 1950. I learned English in 9 weeks and went to college. Upon graduation, I married and started a family. Today, I have 2 children and 5 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. I wish I could say that anti-Semitism stopped after World War II, but it rages on. On October 7, 2023, we saw Hamas kill 1,195 Jews. It's been over 570 days, and we still have hostages. These atrocities are and were barbaric, to say the least. Were traumatizing to survivors. Barely scratches the surface. Protests on college campuses that intimidate and threatens Jewish students are not being and cannot be ignored. I remember vividly when Slovakian classmate taunted Jewish kids like me, and what's happening today looks like and feels like the same. The most recently in Pennsylvania, governor's residence were burned by arsonists during Passover. I spent my days going to school, talking about my experience, teaching children about dangerous anti-Semitism. 18 states in the United States, including Florida and New York, have law requiring Holocaust survivors. Shows widespread ignorance about the Holocaust, especially among U.S. millennials and GC. And we must do everything possible to educate our young people of the subject of restitution. We survivors have been pressing for years to ensure restitution of looted assets, such as stolen art, which is critical, documenting the realities of the Holocaust. That is why survivors and our families strongly support amendments to HERE Act and other legislation that will enable families to recover their property from those who still want to profit from the Holocaust. This is also important because part of Shoah terrible legacy is that for the past several decades, nearly half of all the survivors lived and died in poverty without the adequate food, medicine, or home care. Survivors suffer from extreme physical and mental health challenges due to the long-term effects of starvation, beatings, disease, malnutrition, and the murders of our loved ones. I am here reminding everyone that there is still thousands of survivors alive today who are in desperate need and who cannot be forgotten. Thank you for having this hearing on anti-Semitism. It has been a problem, and God Almighty, it still is a problem. Thank you.